Hey guys, what's up? This is Jamie. I have no production level, so I am the accountant. And this is We Have to Change Together. Sometimes we talk about political stuff. Sometimes we talk about parenting. Sometimes we talk about Jamie's just crazy. You just never know with me. So Hakuna Matata. Anyway, so we had a guest today, Dr. Tawana Bell. She could not make it today. So she called in another doctor friend of hers, and she showed up, and she was like, well, what kind of interview am I getting into? I was like, you're going to find out today. But we're going to have fun today. So today's on shows, we have Dr. Niang.
Yes.
Hi.
Very good.
So, doctor, what exactly is your claim to fame? What is it that you have to do? And you have to talk directly into your microphone.
Okay.
And you can move your microphone anywhere you want. It's on a swivel.
Cool. So, my area of practice and area of expertise is clinical addictions. So I traditionally work with underserved populations who have historically been oppressed by several means. I'm also a professor of practice, and so I train people to become addiction counselors.
So what does that process look like?
So an addiction counselor has to have, of course, the educational background where they're learning the theory and the 12 core functions of practice. When most people think about counseling, of course, they think about the actual counseling part of it. But the other function of that is advocacy and case management, which I would say is probably a larger force within the job itself. And so they have to learn all of those 12 core functions. They have to have classroom education training. They also have to have clinical practice of some form. And of course, they have to pass a state licensure or certification exam.
Okay. Remember, I warned you. I like rabbit holes. So what are those 12 cores? Can you give us a little bit of breakdown?
Okay. So screening and assessment, because there's always the assumption that if you use a substance, then you're a substance user or a substance abuser, which is not the case. As we know, people drink alcohol, but they may not have a diagnosis of substance use disorder. So they need to know how to screen for those disorders. They need to know how to assess and diagnose, also to be able to provide counseling, but also to be able to provide case management and advocacy as well as crisis intervention. And so it's a full realm of things that have to take place within that scope of practice.
So what made you get into all of this in the first place? Or how did it draw you in?
Well, I think historically I have always been around substance use. I mean, historically we referred to people as being abusers or dependents, but we don't use those terms anymore. We just use use disorder.
Okay.
And so I've always been around, I guess, substance use. And I've just seen it, and I just felt drawn to it in a sense.
So yeah, my dad was a real bad alcoholic. I've told people this several times. So my coping mechanism was, as a child, telling myself I was never going to be like him. So I always said, if I had a kid, this is what I was going to do. And I know I have a very addictive personality. So I made the conscious effort never to even try alcohol. I'm scared to death of it. I'm afraid if I taste it and I like it, I won't be able to stop. Girl, I've been fighting Mountain Dew for years. Mountain Dew is like my kryptonite. It is green, so yeah. So it's just I've identified those traits in myself, and I have took such a hard line because of my addictive personality. So is this your coping mechanism to try to help other people, or is it just something you just generally wanted to do?
Well, I guess, like I said, I've seen it generationally. So as you mentioned, if your father was a substance user, don't use the term alcoholic because it's kind of a archaic term for me. Well, because historically we've used that term and people have taken it on as a label. And so if we believe in the recovery or the change process, then if I put that label on you, then how are you ever going to function without it?
Well, I see your point. I'm a firm believer in identifying trends and not and I guess maybe it's because I'm a Marine. I'm always going to take the hard line.
Yes.
And I like knowing where I sit. So I don't tap dance around stuff, and I don't try to soften stuff up because soft with me doesn't work.
Right.
You literally have to hit me in the head with a 2x4. So the alcoholic term for me is a 2x4. It is a hard definition, and I'm not saying if you're an alcoholic you cannot not become an alcoholic, but that's what you were at that point, and now you've got past it. But up to that point, that's what you were.
That is a good point, and your position is in alignment with what we refer to as an ACOA,
Okay.
which could be an adult child of an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And typically they are, especially if they have other siblings, there's usually one person who does take that hard line. And that person is straightforward. They do not use substances at all.
Yeah.
And they like things clean and clear.
Oh,
They
you
don't
see my
like
studio. This ain't clean.
they don't like any gray areas, and they just like to know what it is. So that's kind of one of the classic
Yeah.
definitions of what we refer to as an ACOA,
Okay.
an adult child of an alcoholic, because they've witnessed or seen the effects of alcohol in a situation where they had no control of.
Yep.
So as an adult, they place themselves in a situation that is more controlling.
Oh, yeah.
And so if they decided to use alcohol, in their minds, I'm putting myself in a position that I could possibly have no control of.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
So
Yeah, I know without a shadow of my doubt, I would be stupid on alcohol. And there is no good thing for me that I can see that would come of it. I've dealt with the reality of my situations for years, and I know. So everybody I've talked to who drinks, for them it's a social release, or it's an escape. I don't need an escape. I'm very content with who I am and why I am, and I'm so afraid that it would take me to a dark place that I just avoid it like the plague.
yes, very good. Well, most people, even if you do develop a use disorder, it always begins with the social aspect of partaking in that substance.
Yeah.
It's experimental, and if you have the opportunity to have a good time while you are using that substance, then you're likely to try it and have a good time again
Yeah.
to recreate that situation. However, when we diagnose and assess, we do take into consideration family history. And so, even though I don't think that people have an addictive personality per se,
Okay.
there may be some genetic indicators. If I talked about it spiritually, I may say that there may be some generational curses that are present that could resurface,
Okay.
in your generation
Sure.
or in your bloodline.
So based off DNA and RNA.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what chromosome that would be?
No.
Okay. I like 23 chromosomes.
No.
I did 7th grade science twice because I liked it so much. Or because I failed the first time, one of the two. But it eventually sunk in. All right. So what were some of the other steps of the 12?
Like I said, advocacy is huge. So if you are a person that has had this diagnosis, so you may encounter some discrimination or some disparities when you're trying to get health care. You may not receive the same health care if it is in your medical record that you have alcohol use disorder or you have opioid use disorder. And so being able to advocate for those persons, especially as they enter into a recovery process and they're trying to take control of their life and become more healthy, you want to make sure that they receive adequate care, and that people do not give them less than what they deserve, because people do think, well, it's their fault. They decided to use the substance. Nobody tied them down
Sure.
and made them take it. They made themselves sick. And so when people have that mindset, then they may not offer that person the same level of treatment or the same quality or the same compassion that they would offer someone else, because
Yeah, I would be guilty of that. And again, because we've already identified the kind of person I am based off my experiences. But so I'm trying to grow as a person too. So explain to me how it wouldn't be that person's fault. Because from my point of view, yes, you may have started this early in your life, and yes, it's hard to get out of, because like I've been fighting Mountain Dew, which is not really a good example, but it gives you an idea. So explain to me from the other side of point of view so I can understand that train of thought.
Well, if I had a mental illness,
Mhm.
people would understand that it's a dysfunction of the brain,
Okay.
that a chemical in my brain may not be working correctly. And as a result of that, there is a manifestation of a mental illness.
So we're like talking like an episode of House.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I love this stuff. Let's keep going.
And so the stigma with substance use is that, again, this person self-inflicted something on them.
Okay.
And I would say that is not the case. If I decided to have a drink socially, or if I had a drink at dinner and I did not know that I was susceptible to become addicted.
So what you're saying is basically it's like you stub your toe. It sends a synaptical impulse into your brain. That part of the brain hemorrhages, and that was the stimuli. But in this case, the alcohol could be the stimuli, which fires a neuron and activates a part of the brain, and now it's turned on. But you have no control of that initial synaptical impulse.
Yes.
Yes, you took the drink. However, the effect of that was not your fault because that was not. I see where you're going with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we also have to understand that it's a central nervous system depressant. And so if I already have depressive symptoms that are untreated, and now I discover alcohol that gives me a feel-good sensation, then I am likely to self-medicate with that.
Yeah.
And so now
Chasing the high.
I have a substance use disorder.
Okay.
Yes.
So how do you help people with that? Oh, and guys, we are live. So if you have any questions at all, please put them on the inbox. Every now and then I'll actually look down and read them, and then we'll fire away through them.
Well, I think treatment is important. And what I've seen historically is that many subgroups or target populations are less likely to get treatment than others.
Okay.
I will say that over the past 5 years, with the increase of opioid use disorder, more people have access to treatment and access to care. People are now offering treatment in a doctor's office, whereas 10 years ago, when we had a crack epidemic, that was not the case.
Yeah.
Those efforts were done more community-based, and they were more so for Black and Brown communities.
Okay.
And so we know that more non-Black and Brown people have opioid use disorder. They have been impacted by this epidemic more so than Black and Brown people. And we've seen more access to care. We've seen more treatment. We've seen more financial benefits available to providing treatment.
Okay. How's that taking place? What started that growth?
That started the growth for
the actual better care. What shifted that? Because you said that before it wasn't as good. The care wasn't there, right?
Mm-hmm.
What actually made people finally start doing the proper care? Or are we even doing the proper care yet?
I think we are doing the proper care. I think people were dying.
Okay.
And the people that were dying, people cared about them enough to say, this is my son, this is my daughter.
Sure.
They didn't say, oh, this is just a crackhead nobody that we don't care about.
Yeah.
Or they said, okay, I need to help my son, I need to help my daughter.
Yeah.
So even though they were this person that we didn't recognize anymore, there was somebody that said, no, my daughter is still in there.
Yeah.
My son is still in there. So I need to be able to find help and treatment, for my son and my daughter.
Yeah. We had to get back to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you're probably wondering, like, why did he ask me that? So I like to peel back the layers of the onions. And I'm not content with surface information. I want to get into why we think the way we do, why we do what we do, and how we can move forward as a betterment for everybody.
Yes.
So by understanding other points of view, it helps me give me that information I need. And then I can form hypotheses and start generating law and all that good stuff.
Yes.
All right. So do you have a practice going now, or do you just teach?
I teach, I consult, I I'm all over the place.
Okay. So what does
All
that
over
look
the
like?
place. Well, because of COVID-19, which has been scary but has been excellent for care, there has been an increase in the availability of telehealth or telemedicine. So a practitioner could see someone in Tennessee but be in their home in North Carolina. Um, Services are HIPAA compliant. We don't have to be face to face, but it's considered face to face because I can see you
Mhm.
electronically, of course. Um, and so that has been an awesome thing because of COVID-19. Telehealth has always existed. People were apprehensive of it. Some people didn't want to engage in the process, but COVID forced people to take on the challenge to adjust their technology, to do whatever they needed to do to make sure that people still receive their health care. So,
So on the
yes.
mental parts of it, I would imagine it's kind of like, I don't know, it may make some people feel more comfortable being in their safe spot, having these conversations with people. I think I'd be more of like, I'd want to be at someone's office because that's just the kind of personality I have. But I don't know. I guess. So what kind of feedback have you been getting from clients?
I think they love it. I mean, just to know, I mean, the anxiety of not being able to go out, not having any social contact for a period, just to know that you have access to someone that you can talk to, has been great. Um, I think that we don't realize how technology savvy we are until we're forced or we have to be.
Mhm.
Everybody has a cell phone, so everyone really has access. And even when you think about people in rural communities who historically are underserved,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's more difficult to get a specialized practitioner in a rural area because we can't afford to pay that person to go there. So it provides people in rural areas access to people with specialized training and specialized treatment. So,
So what do you think the next level is, or is there anything you would like to implement into the telehealth that would make your job easier?
well, I think that
I know
we
a lot of computer nerds.
um I don't know. I think it's been really good. I mean, there's been some platforms that offer breakout rooms, so you're able to actually do a group.
Hmm.
You can have 15 people on one Zoom
Hmm.
call, have breakout sessions. So I think the technology has been really supportive. I would just like for the system to consider it as healthcare,
Okay.
not just what we're doing because of the pandemic. That is just a normal part of healthcare. I think that it could also be effective in reducing, health disparities in general.
Yeah, I mean, nothing beats a fail like a try. And if you look at the statistics now, being that this pandemic is going to keep on going a little longer, we're going to have a pretty good test study right here that we didn't even really have to fund. It just kind of happened.
Yeah. So it's been a little scary, but like I said, it really pushed the limits and just taken us to the next level, the next generation of what healthcare is going to look like. So I think it's going to be important for educators to be on board. I mean, we already have online learning, but also to include information to students on how to effectively engage in telemedicine. Like, what are some of the things that you can do to make sure that your session is inviting? What tips can you give the client if they are in their home? How can they create kind of this mindfulness atmosphere as if they were in your office? So I think that's going to be important for educators to get on board to include that in their curriculum as we prepare the next generation of healthcare workers.
So I'm all about building sets. So what would you consider inviting? What would be a good environment that you think the doctor should have? Let's start with the doctor side of it first. And I'm gonna build it in my head as we go.
Okay. Well, one of the things that, I tell people that I provide supervision with is okay, you are in your home, but you still have to present in a professional manner.
Hmm.
So don't just get up with your scarf on and jump on and do your session because,
Okay.
of course, the clients can see you.
Hmm.
So you want them to know that you prepared for this as if you are going to work.
Sure.
Um, I also typically diffuse some type of essential oil to prepare for the session, because I have to be tuned in as well.
Sure.
So if I'm not in the session, I'm doing paperwork, or if I'm doing notes, I have to mentally transition where I'm totally tuned in to what the client is saying. And I'm not worried about whether or not I fixed lunch for the kids already, or if I've cleaned up the house, and those things. So I try to diffuse, just to set that atmosphere to say, okay, I'm going
Sure.
into session.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do for lighting or sound, or do you not even think about that stuff?
Sound is good, because if you are having a group, sometimes people's technology is slower than others, and waiting for them to sign on. So again, we do promote mindfulness, and so we do have music to start the session. So it's there. Everyone's kind of getting tuned in.
Sure.
And once everybody's on board, we're ready to go.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to go down a technology rabbit hole with you. I was like, oh, let's talk about lighting and let's talk about microphones. I love all that stuff.
I have no idea.
You don't?
No. Well, I think, because like I said, so whoever is the creator or CEO of Zoom, like they just, I don't know, the Lord just decided to bless them in this season. Because, I mean, I don't know what we would have done without it. I mean, I tried several platforms, but they were not equipped to handle the volume, to handle the groups, and then to have those breakout sessions. They just missed the mark.
Sure.
And so the people that,
Yeah.
made the mark, big ups to them. 'Cause
Outstanding.
They made it happen.
Age of the Geek.
Yeah. They made it happen.
So, what other stuff are you guys doing besides teaching and besides doing telehealth? Tell me more about your practice. What is your day to day?
Well, right now, again, I'm gearing up to try to figure out what the next stage of education is going to look like. Of course, I mean, we already have online learning and we're accustomed to that, but how do you get the student or the counselor in training fully engaged when you don't have that face-to-face opportunity? So you want to make sure that it's exciting, but also you want to make sure that they're aware and equipped with all the current events that are going on. If it wasn't COVID-19, we'd probably be, outside and watching protests and just being engaged, or passing out food, or all of those things. But we can't really do that right now. And so one of the biggest things for me is that you cannot get to the level of self-actualization until you have those basic needs met. So kind of Maslow's hierarchy of need. So if people don't have food, clothing, and shelter, it's going to be difficult for me to talk to them about their history of trauma.
Sure.
It's going to be hard for me to kind of boost their self-esteem and pour into them so that they can change their life. If they are wondering about where they're going to go to work, if they're going to be laid off, is their unemployment going to be stopped? And so trying to figure out how to engage with people virtually so that their basic needs are met. Because if those things aren't taken care of, I can't go to the next level with you in terms of becoming self-actualized and empowered.
Yeah, because they can't open up because they're stressed about everything else.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you found that to be true a lot? That's a lot of the demographic you're working in has that problem right now? Or what percentage of your clients are having that problem? Because I'm in one of those rare businesses. With COVID, my business is actually accelerated. A lot of people want to do podcasts right now because they have to. I've been doing a lot of live streaming for churches because they have to. So I have not had a day off, with the exception of when my son came down from Chicago. He came down for 2 days, so I took those 2 days off. But I haven't had a day off besides those 2 days in almost 5 months.
Wow.
So I'm at the studio or on a job 7 days a week.
Well, I mean, like I said, healthcare, probably with the exception of like surgeons, because there weren't any surgeries being scheduled during the peak of COVID. I think most healthcare practitioners that started to do telehealth did very well.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to sustain their practices if they took on telehealth. If they
Yeah.
didn't, it was definitely a struggle. For the most part, I think that people were able to access services that they needed, whether that was unemployment or things of that nature, to kind of get through the crisis. But when those things run out, or if they're not extended,
Sure.
then we have to have another plan.
Yeah.
People will become more stressed
Sure.
and more worried about what their next steps are.
Sure.
So we see that the numbers are going up, but there hasn't been a plan released to say that, oh, we're going to have another shutdown. People don't know. So the anxiety of the unknown is an increased stressor.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that people won't, of course, use substances as a result of this increased anxiety.
Yeah.
People couldn't go out. There weren't any social gatherings or events. So although restaurants were closed, the ABC store did not.
It did no. It makes the state way too much money.
They did not close. They reduced their hours, and their lines remained pretty long.
Yeah.
So,
have you been to a restaurant since COVID? I have. I was just at one the other day. So I went to a Mexican restaurant in Tichy, and it was every other table was flipped, so you couldn't sit in it. And I missed it. I really did. I like that interaction. I'm just a sociable something, but like it's not going to be for everybody, and a lot of people are going to be stressed, and a lot of people are going to be worried. I'm a firm believer. If I'm going to die, it's my time. I've accepted that, and I know it's not what a healthcare worker wants to hear, but it's just I refuse to live my life in fear. I refuse to live my life with regrets. And if I guess if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. But I just don't see it happening. But go ahead and tell me why I'm wrong.
You say that. Well, I don't want you to say that, and I don't think it's fear, but it's operating in wisdom, and having the correct information.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you watch the news all day, some people watch CNN all day.
Mm-hmm.
They're watching, and listening to Dr. Fauci,
Mm-hmm.
and they're taking his advice, which is good advice,
Okay.
I will say.
Okay.
But that too much of the information can create a sense of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to have a spirit of fear.
No. But have a spirit of discernment.
Yes.
Don't let I'm not saying go do silly things. I just say don't live in fear. So it's I wash my hands all the time.
Yes.
I practice a safe distance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go and sit on someone's lap and start breathing into their face. I'm not going to do anything like that. But I'm going to have conversations. I'm going to not wear a mask because I'm just breathing in my own oxygen constantly if I have a mask on. I mean, it's and I can't get past a single layer of fabric is going to get through something that's how many microns is COVID? I mean, I'm seeing the science of it. Tell me I'm wrong.
Don't do that. Don't do that. We're still trying to make sure that people are on board with following the CDC's recommendations. Sure. I'm really glad that more people are following the recommendations. Like I said, if you know someone who has been diagnosed with COVID, mm-hmm. it then starts to get real.
Yeah.
So even though you hear the information, you see the numbers, you see the diagrams on the news, it doesn't get real until you know someone in your circle that has actually been diagnosed, and then you start to think, oh wow, this is...
Yeah, I haven't had that aha moment yet.
Mm-hmm. It gets real then.
Yeah, I mean, the second that you can pull something in where you have that legitimate connection, you're always going to get a different response.
Mm-hmm.
But I have not had that connection yet. So to me, it's still that, I will believe when I see it kind of thing.
Yeah.
I drive my pastor crazy. He's like, Jamie, where's your mask? I ain't wearing it. Nope.
Wear your mask, please. Please.
90% of the time I'm here in the studio anyways.
When you go out to the congregations to film,
Okay.
wear your mask.
I think I just gave her a heart attack. That's no bueno. All right. Is there anything you want to say to everybody before we leave, or how your contact information?
No. I would like to say, again, we are still trying to figure out how to just serve people in the midst of COVID-19, and look for new strategies that we can do that in a safe manner. And so at Cape Fear Community College, we do have the Human Services Technology Program, where we are training certified counselors. And it is going to be one of those professions that might be recession proof.
Yeah.
Because people are going to be stressed, and they're going to have anxiety. And then also people will need to know how to get access to services and care, whether that's housing, employment, how to get their basic needs met. And we're going to need laborers to be able to do that. So it's a really good program.
Yep. Yeah, you're never going to go wrong with information technology or healthcare. They're always going to be around. The trick is evolving with the technology.
Yes.
Evolving with the times. You cannot stay with information that you've had 10 years ago. You've got to keep updating yourself. If you do that, you'll always be working.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been awesome. This was a happy mistake. I love happy mistakes. Yay, Bob Ross, happy clouds. Well, Dr. Niang, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And guys, we love you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.